How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be reacting to Mutahar, also known as Some Ordinary Gamer. He has a new video called "We Need to Optimize Video Games Again," and I just saw the little bit of the beginning, and yes, is another video hating on Unreal Engine. I just want to react to it and give you my input as someone that pretty much uses Unreal Engine on a daily basis. And I just want to see if this is another case of not understanding that is the developers that didn't choose to optimize the engine to their needs, as opposed to Unreal Engine being the blame of absolutely everything that's wrong with video games nowadays. So let's get started. All right, before we start, I just want to say I really like Muda. I think he does great videos. I don't care about the recent controversy he's been to, whether he's an engineer or not. I think he really knows what he's talking about. So let's see if he knows in this one.
One that just happened to me tonight, I'm somebody that loves playing video games. And, when I used to play video games like 10, maybe 15 years ago, generally speaking on the PC, if it was strong enough, I could get, a full 60 frames. I could get the game looking sharp. I could even put on some settings and make the game look nicer than it was supposed to. But ladies and gentlemen, 15 years later, 2025, every modern
That is true. I think ray tracing, and if you've seen my videos, you know that I agree. I think ray tracing has done a lot of damage to performance in games with how much detail it gives. I know there is an argument about reflections because screen space reflections are not great, but I think ray tracing it's overall has not been great for gaming.
AAA game that I buy runs like hot garbage. Games run and stutter like no tomorrow. Games look blurrier than anything. It's almost like I have cataracts. Ladies and gentlemen, today's video is all about Unreal Engine 5. And I firmly think Unreal Engine 5 is probably one of the worst engines to ever grace the PC platform.
The worst game engine ever made? After Unreal has produced several games that have been highly praised by a lot of people. It has its issues. The starting is an issue. But it's by no means the worst engine ever.
Now, to give you some history over here, the reason why I'm making this video is about this game called Mafia: The Old Country. Now, to no disrespect, the game is okay. Like, it took me around 9.5 hours to beat this game. It was $50. Now, the thing about this game is it runs on Unreal Engine 5. And because it runs on Unreal Engine 5, this game stutters almost every single where you go. If you go into a city, expect the frame rate to drop all the way down to 30, maybe 40 frames per second. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I run a 4090. I run a pretty decent CPU, and I have a shit pot full of fast RAM. Now, for this video, when I was running...
Okay, he's running that at... He has a 4090, so it should be a lot higher than 36 frames per second. And I don't know, this looks a little bit different than what I saw on the trailers and everything. I don't know if it's YouTube's compression that it's making the textures look bad, but the textures that I'm seeing are fairly low res for a game running at those amount of frames. I think there's more going on than just Unreal Engine bad. I think this is a real developer issue.
The game, just because I wanted to test it, I ran this underneath Linux, as is my regular operating system, but I also ran it underneath Windows, and I really didn't see any massive performance difference, okay? The game ran like hot shit. Now, this is one of my big problems, and one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video. This game does not look impressive, okay? Now, I see a lot of controversy.
No, it doesn't. But I remember the trailers look fantastic. I don't know what's going on. But if you look at what I've been seeing on Twitter, is that this game is awesome. Everybody's been praising this game. Everybody has been having a great time with it. This is why I was so surprised that this was the game that he was discussing, because I've heard nothing but good remarks about this game. So let's keep watching. It It's very interesting.
Controversy with this game. Apparently, people were mad that you couldn't swim in this game. And look, it's a game about mafia, okay? Like, the last thing I expect out of mafiosos is swimming. Usually, everyone has cement shoes on, and they're drowning at the bottom of the fucking ocean. No, really, the controversy should be the game runs like hot fucking ass. That's the issue. For the most part, okay, I give the same money to these gaming companies. All right, I expect at least a functional piece of software. Now, I beat this game, and it wasn't an enjoyable experience. I mean, I'm talking like as soon as you go into the cities, you're touching 30, maybe going below on it, right? And I think on a 4090...
I see there's a lot of cloth movement. I don't know if the horses are using hair cards of grooms. They're probably hair cards. But they're using a lot of chaos cloth on several characters. I'm pretty sure that's what's running, that flag over there. It's possible that's what's killing frames.
I know it's not the brand new 5090. It's not the most brand spanking card out there, but it should at least run a little better.
Yeah, no questions about it. There's something wrong with the game because, like, I have a 5090 on this computer right here. I have another computer down here that has my old 3090. I run a ton of games on my 3090 at over 60 frames per second. It's not a case of this game needs a better GPU because that game doesn't look half as good to need more resources. That's
right? It should run better. So one of the things that I looked at was obviously the performance benchmark. So I went to Tech Power Up. They made a whole giant list of GPUs and how the performance was running. Now, if you look at this game really quickly with these comparison screenshots, this is what the game looks like on Epic. So if you look at the house really quickly.
Again, I don't know if it's YouTube or what, but holy cow, that looks... What is even this? Is this a fence made out of concrete? Jeez, that doesn't look good.
Over here on Epic, the shadows are filled in. On low, yeah, it looks a little, shittier. But of course, if you look at the frame rate, 47 FPS, all the way to 68, oof, that's pretty bad. Obviously, I'm going to try upping the frame rate. Now, even on my system, when I set the game for all the way from epic settings to the lowest settings, I wasn't really looking at a massive performance difference. This is also one of those games where if you're going to run it, you absolutely need to use any of the upscaling technologies. It also has frame generation, but because the game stutters like no tomorrow, yeah, ladies and gentlemen.
This shouldn't be... Frame generation should not be a crutch. Frame generation should be an extra. The game should work as, out of the box without the need of frame generation. I do think it's ridiculous that most games are having their requirements with frame generation in mind. Not good.
Gentlemen, it feels like ass no matter how you play it. So I decided to look at all of these actual cards. So the 5090, for instance, is hitting 89 frames at 1920 by 1080p at the epic settings. So whether I had frame generation on or not, it actually played better with the fucking frame generation turned off. So on average, I played the game around 4.
That's another thing that I've seen in recent video games. Sometimes when you turn off the frame generation, they actually run better. So I don't get what was the whole point of the upsell that they did at the NVIDIA keynote.
So I checked out the mod, and apparently for Unreal Engine 5, they have full tweaks to make this engine run a whole lot better. Basically, if you have to do this, if you have to modify the fucking engine itself to make it more performant.
So modifying the INI files is sometimes something that I do per project if I just want to run certain specific settings depending on what I'm rendering at that moment. But that doesn't modify the whole engine, because once I'm getting into the engine, I can console command and change those settings again. So that's not a good argument.
Ladies and gentlemen, maybe we've got a problem. Now, I'm one of those people where I love graphics. I think they're cool like every other guy, but I think this is the gaming generation, PS5, Xbox Series S and X, where I really feel like the graphics aren't really all that impressive. To be honest with you, I haven't been impressed with graphics since early PlayStation 4.
I agree. But the reason why that happens is because we have reached the peak of a graphical fidelity, characters and environments. So any improvement that is all the way up from there is going to need a tremendous amount of resources. And once you are at the peak, you're not going to see that much difference. Like, I remember back in the day, once we switched from PS2 to PS3, that was like, wow. But yeah, we actually, I always say it in my X account, if you want to follow me there, links in the description, that we peaked a long time ago, like around 2015. We already peaked graphics, especially when it comes to hardware. There's only so much you can do, and I think ray tracing has done a lot of damage to this part of this era of video games.
Or Xbox One. Now, for all intents and purposes, I know people roasted Assassin's Creed Unity, but I thought that shit looked pretty damn good in terms of how populated environments were, the lighting.
Assassin's Creed Unity looks much better than many games nowadays. I've only delved into the Anvil engine a little bit, but I don't know much. So I don't know if the pop-in for the characters on screen could be fixed ever, but that is the only thing. That is the only problem with Assassin's Creed Unity right now. The game looks great, and it looks much better than a lot of Assassin's Creed today.
Looked generationally better than the PlayStation 3. You know what? There's another game that's amazing. Games like Arkham Knight, a game that runs on a modified version, a heavily modified version of Unreal Engine 3. And you know what? To this day, when I was playing it again just to...
Listen to what he said. A heavy modified version of Unreal Engine 3. I believe at that time was UDK. I wasn't in the game industry yet, but this is one of the issues that I always say whenever people start saying, "Oh, it's Unreal Engine, it's Unreal Engine, it's Unreal Engine." The developers are supposed to tailor the engines to their needs. You're not supposed to use the engine out of the box as is, because the game engine is a toolbox. If you don't tailor that toolbox to the video games that you are making, then you are going to have problems. A good example of that is Kingdom Come Deliverance. Kingdom Come Deliverance is running on the CryEngine. CryEngine back in the day was one of the worst performing engines. But if you play Kingdom Come Deliverance, it looks good, but it also performs fantastic. I didn't see any problems with performance with that game. But what they did is they took the CryEngine and they work on it. They tailored to their needs. That is something that a lot of game developers are not doing with Unreal Engine. And then you get issues like what we're seeing with Mafia.
Record this video. Brothers, it looked like a goddamn brilliant title, especially compared to the stuff I've seen now. Now, if I put Batman Arkham Knight next to Mafia the Old Country, Batman straight up throat fucks Mafia the Old Country to no tomorrow. But you're like, oh, that's an unfair comparison, Muda. The games are totally different. Okay, well then I decided to get Mafia 1 Definitive Edition. This is a remake of a game that released on the PlayStation 4. Now I fired this game up on my PC. And you know what really shocked me? Instead of getting 40 frames per second, I was pulling over 100 frames without any fucking upscaling. Everything was running at epic. And you know what's really funny? This Definitive Edition actually, in my opinion, again, subjective, looked better than Mafia the Old Country.
At the time that this game came out, ray tracing, looming was not a thing yet. So it's probably a lot of backlighting, which is what gives you good performance. I use ray tracing a lot on my day job, but I don't make games. I render products, I render equipment, I make 3D animations. So yeah, I use a lot of ray tracing inside of Unreal Engine. Fantastic for that. For games, I would still bake the lights. I know there's people who disagree. Even the people that I look up to really disagree with this take, but I think for video games, they still need to be baking lights because ray tracing is destroying performance.
Resources than a lot of the better looking games of the past. And I really think all of it just comes down to Unreal Engine 5. This game does not do anything more special than even Mafia 2. At the core of it, it's a linear.
And for those of you who follow me that are not game developers, backlighting, what it is the engine computes the lighting around the bounce lighting, because everything like light bounce a lot all over the place. And that's why when you get an object close to another object, that object inherits a little bit of the color of that other object. So if you bake the lighting, that is calculated by the game engine, and it's all saved into texture maps. Now, the problem with that is the light is static. If you have dynamic objects, there's a lot of things that you have to do to make that work. So there is a way to have static lighting, which is the baked lighting, and dynamic lighting at the same time. One of the solutions, and actually something that was implemented in the engine for Death Stranding 2, was that they're using probes. They're using probes for the dynamism of the light, which is much better than using ray tracing. There's a way to do it with probes inside of Unreal Engine 2. I use it in Unreal Engine 4. I'm pretty sure you can still use it in Unreal Engine 5. It's an NVIDIA plugin. I even had a demo of it on my old channel, but it is possible. So again, I know I sound like a ray tracing hater, even though I use it for my daily job, but yeah, it's not good for games.
Third-person action-adventure shooter, okay? That's all that it is. You know, the thing about visuals is fine, forget it. The visuals don't need to increase. But even the gameplay for this title is stuck. But when it comes to PC, there are some pretty substantial issues. Now again, one of the reasons why this tends to happen is something known as pipeline state objects. Now, Unreal Engine's actually kind of talked about this whole stutter problem. Usually when you start up many modern games, usually they have an entire screen that you see one time where it's just building tens of thousands of shaders. The other thing is all of the extra lumen, nanite, and shadowing that these games tend to issue. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Unreal Engine 5 has all of these like ray tracing features tossed into it. So lighting like lumen typically can look kind of cool if implemented properly. There's features like nanite, which makes really sharp textures. And again, if implemented.
Nanite's not about textures, it is about geometry. The what you see on screen is usually a mix of polygons with the color on them, which is a texture. What nanite does, it's not related to the texture, it's related to the geometry. So that means that you can get a really high polygon geometry, which is something that you usually can't in a game engine. And what nanite does is for the engine to be able to run with that really high polygon. From what I've seen in some games, it seems to work well for some games, and it doesn't seem to be working well for others. I don't know what is up with that, but yeah, it's nothing about textures, it's just geometry.
Implemented properly and optimized properly, it might actually be pretty sweet. And of course, I would say that a lot of the developers that are currently playing around with Unreal Engine 5 really aren't able to optimize some of these features. In fact, I would say for the most part, previous games did a lot of this ray trace stuff better. So I would say in some cases, games like Mirror's Edge, game that's so old that it can now legally drive. It's not a game that had ray tracing, but this is a time where I would say baked tracing or baked lighting was really a common norm, and lighting looked really good. Now, of course, the limitation for that was there wasn't a day-night cycle, and for a game like that, there really didn't need to be. It looked good. It looked amazing. It looked punchy. It looked unique. But of course...
That's the thing about baked lighting. It is static, but you can do really high resolution baked lighting because it's a texture map. So you can bake a high resolution texture map. It's going to take a while, and during development, it does increase development time because there's some trial and error parts that you have to deal with that. But yeah, you can get fantastic lighting. And like I mentioned before, there are ways to mix dynamic lighting with static lighting. I don't know if he talks about that here.
There are other games like Red Dead Redemption 2 that look absolutely jaw-dropping. One would think that maybe there's some actual ray tracing going on there, but there's not. It's just Rockstar Games doing a really good job faking it with their own engine. And there's a reason why games that use ray tracing appropriately, like it seems Grand Theft Auto 6 is, it can look absolutely amazing. GTA 6 looks, in my opinion, better than even path-traced games running on RTX 4090s or 50.
Path tracing is another thing that I think it's retarded that it is in games. The amount of resources that you need to have path tracing in a game is ridiculous compared to that little itty bitty of realism that you get.
5090s. And that's just a really good development team putting their efforts and not just relying on the Unreal slop 5. Now, there's a whole slew of games that drove me insane. For instance, in Unreal Engine 5, there's developers.
Here's another thing that he even admits, that developers put the effort into taking care of the lighting in the particular game instead of just using Unreal Engine out of the box, because I don't think Unreal Engine was ever meant to be used out of the box. If you're a big studio, you're supposed to tailor the engine to your needs. And if you're a small studio, then you have to work within constraints. Look at Clair Obscur. Look at Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers. Yes, those games have stuttering, but they work well. People like them. People think they perform well. Same thing with Black Myth Wukong. Fantastic game. I can keep naming Splitgate, even though Splitgate one had to go back because gameplay stuff. Splitgate run great, and was made with Unreal Engine 5 as well. So several games that work well versus this. It's not the engine.
That will literally design their games with upscaling in mind. You would need to have things like DLSS, FSR, XESS, all these upscalers, which their only job is to lower the resolution of the game and basically upscale it so that you can run these at proper frame rates. One of the first showcase games was Quake 2 RTX. There were also other games that came out that basically did something unique. Like some games would have ray traced shadows, some would have ray traced reflections, and for the most part, I would say, aside from one or two games, these would mostly be gimmicky. But we needed upscalers because all of a sudden the gaming industry introduced something that was so computationally expensive, ray tracing. And because of that, we needed to have all these upscalers, because if you decided to run games natively with ray tracing, especially even with the top end cards at the time, you'd be getting like what, 40, 50 frames, less than 6.
What I've been saying, it's ray tracing that has done a lot of damage to the industry. It's not Unreal Engine.
60. So you had to run games at lower resolutions, upscale them, just so you could actually make the game run.
And before somebody makes something in the comments that Unreal Engine is forcing ray tracing on developers, Epic is not forcing anything on anyone. You can still bake lightings. GPU baked lights in Unreal Engine 5 is great.
At a playable fucking frame rate. And in most cases, I would say ray tracing really isn't even worth the hype. We did not need to use DLSS to get basic performance running. This did not need to be a fucking requirement unless you were firing up ray tracing or setting things to an unhealthy degree. Now it seems like every fucking game requires this shit in the industry.
Here's why I think this is going on. Graphics sell. There's no argument about that. Maybe for you, graphics is not the first thing, but graphics do sell games. If a game looks like amazingly well, people will buy it just because it looks cool. Maybe in the long run, it doesn't sell pretty well. But yeah, when Death Stranding 2 came out, what did people were talking about? How great the characters look. When they showcased the new GTA 6, what did people talk about? When they did that tech demo with The Witcher 4, which still a tech demo, that's not how The Witcher 4 is going to look. What did people talk about? So, graphics sell. Because of that, ray tracing always had the promise that games will look much better because it's ray tracing. It's actual global illumination, like in the real world. It's ray trace. It's the same thing that we use in offline renderers like Arnold, like Cycles. But the problem is they take up so much resources. And I'll keep saying it. It's just too many resources for the output that it gives. On the other hand, using ray tracing as opposed to backlighting does cut down on development time and makes life easier for developers. But again, that's an argument about development and not about the engine itself.
Was given Digital Foundries one of the worst optimized experiences they had seen even on consoles, okay? Forget the fucking PC. And in most cases, I'll personally say it right now, I don't think the lighting in games like just Mafia the Old Country were so jaw-dropping that it was worth losing all of those frames for no reason. I would prefer to just have my games look like the PS4 era of releases if it meant I could have 100 frames per second and above. Not this 40 to 50 pilfering shit that keeps stuttering as I play.
Completely agree. Fully agree with Muda there. This has been a surprising video because I thought I was going to disagree with him a lot, but no, he's completely right.
That is not fun. That is not an enjoyable experience. That is not an experience I feel comfortable paying full price for. But unfortunately, that's the fucking industry right now. Now, it feels kind of annoying to just blame Unreal Engine 5 for the fucking state of the gaming industry. And I'm not just going to pin the blame there. I'm sure it's not just Epic's fault. I'm sure it's also the fault of developers that literally are not completely down with understanding.
Okay. Again, I'm just watching this video with you guys. He agrees. It's not about Unreal Engine being bad, like a lot of other channels are saying. There's channels that have literally been built just saying that Unreal Engine is bad. It's not Unreal. There are options within Unreal. You don't have to use ray tracing all the time. See, we agree a lot.
The intricacies of such an engine. A lot of the times it feels like, they'll slap on all of these ray tracing features and like additions that Unreal Engine 5 provides, but they never really go through with the optimization stage of it. So ultimately the end product just literally exists to destroy computers for no real tangible gain. The reason I'm making this video.
One thing that's interesting, I don't know if he's played it, but a game that was very interesting for me to see was Stellar Blade. Because Stellar Blade performs really well. It looks pretty cool. And it was made with Unreal Engine 4. But it was made with Unreal Engine 4.27. That was, to me, peak Unreal Engine 4 when everything was developed, when everything was already out there, all the fixes were out. That was like just a couple iterations before we got into Unreal Engine 5. And I do wonder that if when we get to that position of Unreal Engine 6, because we are getting there, we're already in 5.6, 5.7, almost getting launched. I don't know if this year or next year, but I do wonder if when we get to Unreal Engine 6, then Unreal Engine 5 would be at its highest potential.
Is I bought a game on PC, and I am just so tired with seeing the lack of performance. 9 months ago, I made a video about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
All right, so that was very interesting. Again, I didn't know we were going to agree so much. I personally still don't think it's Unreal Engine. I think it's a developer. I think it's unfortunate that because many studios choose not to really optimize their games, it's hurting the reputation of Unreal Engine. If it was for me, I would have forbidden games from using ray tracing from the beginning. Ray tracing has been a blessing for people like myself because the way that I work, I'm a 3D artist, I have been able to work in the volume LED walls, doing commercials. I've done maps for various other projects that are being shot in the LED wall. I've done 3D animation that now I can run real time because of Unreal Engine 5 and Lumen. However, when it comes to games, they don't need that. I know the development is going to suck if you go back to making light maps, but we need to go back to those times. Agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comment sections down below. Now, I know I sounded a little bit like an Unreal Engine hater in this video, And I have another video that's coming out pretty soon that is about why there are so many games that are looking so similar made with Unreal Engine, but I still love the engine. I use it on my daily job. I think Unreal Engine is one of the best things that ever happened. Maybe not to the gaming industry, but to the 3D artist industry, if you want to call it that. But yeah, let me know what you think about that. Subscribe for those other videos that are coming down the pipeline. The one about games looking similar in Unreal Engine 5 is going to be pretty interesting. There's going to be some surprises in there. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like, really helps the channel. Thanks so much for watching all the way to this point. I'll see you in the next one.